Well, howdy there, stranger. I'm Jordy.
And I'm Brad.
And welcome back to Beers with Queers, the true crime podcast where I research a case and Brad here, and potentially you guys,
don't know a damn thing about it.
So, if you listened to last week, yes, my voice is finally back and better than ever. Thankfully, Brad had an episode ready to go, and so we did not miss a week, and I had time to recover. So, thank you, Brad.
You're welcome.
It was a really good episode. If you guys haven't listened to it yet, it is about the grinder cannibal. A lot of people loved it on TikTok. Because I don't think I've ever actually said this on here. We have a TikTok under the title True Crime Nerds, and I just post little snippets of every episode we do. And so I posted the one about Mark Latunsky, the grinder cannibal, and it took off. And so a lot of y'all really liked that episode, and it was a really good episode. So if you haven't listened to the full version, go check that out. And honestly, this was not planned, but my case this week also deals with cannibalism, and there was a very weird coincidence, actually. So, this is actually probably going to be a case that if you are deep into true crime and you love researching it, you probably more than likely at least heard of it, because it is a pretty infamous case. So, today we're actually going to be talking about the case of Luka Magnotta and the horrific murder of June Lin. So, I don't know, have you ever heard Luka Magnotta? Have you heard that name before?
I might have heard this case. I'm not sure.
We'll see. Once you hear more details, you might recognize it. And for those of you listening, the name probably sounds familiar to you because you may know it from the Netflix documentary series Don't Fuck with Cats. So we'll be touching on that a little bit later, but that was a pretty popular docuseries last year or the year before. I never actually watched it. I watched it for this case to research it last week, and it's a pretty good documentary. But it's definitely one of those cases that has been thrust into the mainstream a lot more recently since it happened. But it's always been one of those cases that's whispered about online. Have you heard this case? Because it is absolutely horrific. And it, sadly, unfortunately, is very horrific.
Okay, I have not heard about this case.
Okay, well then let's just jump right into it because this is going to be a brutal one, so trigger warning. So on May 29th, 2012, at 11 a.m., a package would be delivered to the national headquarters of the Conservative Party of Canada addressed to Stephen Harper, the current Canadian Prime Minister at that time. Now, right away, several workers noted something odd about the package, and they took it to be examined by Stephen's campaign manager, Jenny Bryan. Now, the package was marked with a red heart on it and was emitting a terrible odor. On top of that, the box appeared to be stained with blood all over it. As the package was opened with caution, the stench grew worse and worse until it was opened to reveal what was inside.
Did you say this package was delivered?
Yes, by the mail service.
I'm wondering why the mail service didn't, look at this package.
That's a good question, and it's never brought up again, so that is going to be one of those big mysteries of this case. I'm not really sure.
I mean, it smelled and it was covered in blood. That's kind of a red flag there.
Yeah, it's a pretty big red flag. So after the package was opened, it revealed a decaying and severed human foot. With the foot was a note that read, "Stephen Harper and Lauren Teskey, his wife, will know who this is. They fucked up." Police were, of course, immediately called to investigate, and in the process of their investigation, they intercepted a second package at the post office, which was addressed and on its way to the Liberal Party headquarters. Now, this package contained a decaying and severed human left hand and also came with a note that read, "You need to speak to Lauren Teskey and her family. They have lots to hide." Now, several days later, on June 5th, 2012, another mysterious package would arrive at the St. George's School for Boys located in Vancouver. This package again contained a decomposed right foot and also came with a note, This one reading, "Roses are red, violets are blue. The police will need dental records to identify you, bitch." Later that same day, a package would arrive at Falls Creek Elementary School, which contained a severed right hand. Now, of course, the entire area was in a panic as police scrambled to figure out what the hell was going on, but it would not take them long to zero in on a suspect as the severed limbs found were quickly identified as belonging to a man named June Lynn, and his final moments before his death were traced back to one Luka Magnotta. Now, on top of a manhunt, they had now begun for Luka Magnotta, who was nowhere to be found. Police also had to deal with reports and concerns about a very disturbing video that had been making its way around the internet. Now, upon confirming that the video was genuine, police had no idea just how depraved and sadistic the man calling himself Luka Magnotta truly was and the full extent of his shocking crimes. So let's rewind a bit, of course, and start from the beginning to see how we got here, because when I tell you that Luka Magnotta is one of the most deranged and sadistic and bizarre people you'll ever hear about, that would be an understatement, because this dude is beyond, I have no words, so let's just talk about it.
I'm still stuck on how this person was mailing this stuff, because, I mean, if you've got a bloody box that stinks, it's not like you're going and taking it down to the post office. It's not like it's probably fitting inside of your mailbox or anybody else's mailbox if it's like a severed limb. And I don't think the UPS store is going to be sending anything either. So I'm wondering how it even got into the mail service.
That's interesting, but again, it's never brought up. What happened is we'll find out that the murder occurred several days before. And so when he mailed them, I don't think they were emitting a smell yet or covered in blood. And there's also the potential that it sat at the headquarters for a while before someone actually noticed it, because I'm sure they get sent a lot of mail. So I'm sure it's like an explanation like that. But yeah, when he mailed it out, it was not decaying or had a smell to it.
Or covered in blood.
So I think that's the answer and why it's never brought up again. But it is one of those interesting things, like people mailing severed limbs in the mail. So Luka Magnotta was born Eric Clinton Kirk Newman on July 24th, 1982 in Scarborough, Ontario, to Anna Yorkin and Donald Newman when the two were just 16 years old. The couple would drop out of school in order to take care of their new baby, and although he goes by Eric for the vast majority of his life, I am just going to keep referring to him as Luka, just to avoid confusion. The couple would go on to have 2 more children, and from the time he was born, Luka did not have the best childhood. He was born to teenage parents that's already a difficult hardship in and of itself. You know, I am the child of teenage parents, so I kind of relate to that. But on top of that, both of Luka's parents suffer from severe depression and mental issues, which caused them to neglect their children in various ways. Luka's mother, Anna, was said to have been obsessed with cleanliness and was constantly be cleaning the house. She always wore surgical gloves and masks, and would force the children to repeatedly wash their hands and shower to the point their skin became raw and cracked. She would punish the children by locking them out of the house at night, including in the dead of winter, and Luka would later state that she would often tie his younger brother to a chair and on one occasion killed their pet rabbit by locking it outside during a snowstorm. Luka enjoyed the more feminine side of things from a very early age also, which included wanting to play with Barbie dolls and wear dresses, and at one point around the age of 7, he stated that he didn't actually really feel like a boy. Now, this enraged not only his mother, but also his grandmother, who would often call him a faggot at 7 years old. So that lets you know the kind of adults in Luka's life at this point. Now, Luka's father, by all accounts, tried to be a good father. He was never abusive or mean to any of his children. However, he was also a severe alcoholic, and it wouldn't be until 1994 when the family would find out why. Donald actually suffered from severe paranoid schizophrenia and would drink in an attempt to drown out the voices in his head whispering to him at all hours of the day. This resulted in him, more often than not, being blackout drunk around the kids, and later on the couple would get a divorce when Luka was 13, and in court Donald described Anna as being a cold and cruel woman who enjoyed hurting her children more than loving them. And after getting divorced, Anna quickly remarried to a man who was even worse than she was. He was extremely physically abusive to the children and would often single out Luka for daily beatings, during which his stepfather would scream and call him a faggot. On top of this, Luka's younger brother Conrad also soon joined his stepfather in beating and berating on Luka. So, right off the bat, this poor kid, and we can say poor kid at this point, he's still a kid, like they say, feel sorry for the kid, not the adult. Absolutely horrific conditions, abuse. And on top of all this, Anna refused to allow her children to go to public school because she was such a germaphobe. She didn't want them bringing outside germs into the house. So instead, she decided to homeschool them due to the fear of germs. On top of this, she also barely allowed them to go outside until the 6th grade, meaning that for the first 12 years of his life, this environment is all Luka knew. He had no sort of window to the outside world to show him anything different. And after he started going to public school, Luka would immediately begin to struggle to adjust to his very new environment. And that's gonna be a huge culture shock.
Yeah, this is just a horrible story already.
He went from only ever seeing his parents, who were all abusive, both physically and emotionally, and his siblings, and occasionally he saw a distant relative here or there, but not frequently. And now all of a sudden, he's surrounded by hundreds of people, hundreds of strangers, teachers telling him what to do, and teachers also described him as being very awkward. He had difficulty expressing his emotions, was very sensitive to any sort of criticism, no matter how small, and had a hard time focusing on anything. He also struggled to make friends, of course, with his classmates, and eventually he developed a habit of creating complex and grandiose lies about himself and his family, in an attempt to impress them. And, victims of abuse, I think, do that a lot because it's a form of escapism. He would often brag that he came from a wealthy family and that he often went on vacations with various well-known celebrities, when in actuality, his family struggled to barely put food on the table each day. Teachers did grow concerned because although he was often shy and timid, he did have a rage inside of him.
I would say he did.
Yeah, I would have a rage too at that age because all the horrific things he was going under. And, of course, the right thing to do would be some adult, some teacher, like getting this kid some help to properly express his emotions.
Or getting him out of that situation.
And so that's one of those sad and tragic things is like the adults in his life did fail him from the moment he was born. So this rage would often come out only when someone would call him out on his lies. So which occurred so often, like, again, these are like absolutely absurd lies that everyone knows is not true. Most people humored him on it, but every now and then someone would be like, I'm calling bullshit. I don't think that's true. And that's the only time he would grow enraged and he would become belligerently angry. On one occasion, when a teacher called his lie, his response was to pick up a chair and chuck it at her head. So that shows you what kind of rage it is. He is violently angry. Now, Luka continued to struggle through school, and eventually it became too much for him, and he dropped out at the age of 16. It was also at this time that Luka began to complain about hearing voices in his head. He was taken to a psychiatrist who diagnosed Luka with paranoid schizophrenia and soon placed him in a government-run group home for treatment until he was 18. So that is the first 18 years of Luka Magnotta's life. Absolutely horrific and sad, abuse and neglect at the hands of everyone he knew and loved, suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, couldn't adjust to school life, it was too much for him. And again, up to this point, I feel horrible for the guy.
Yeah, sadly, the best thing that's happened to him is him getting put in this group home.
Yeah, and they're making him take medication to keep his schizophrenia under control and his depression and stuff like that. And so up to this point, I do feel bad for him, but absolutely no excuse for the monster he's about to become, because it is undescribable how horrific it is. So like I said, although it's very tragic, it is absolutely no excuse for what he'll do later on. But right now we can feel bad for him because the poor guy didn't have a chance. Of course, when you suffer that sort of trauma without any healthy outlets to, deal with your emotions or to help you deal with it, you start retreating to your own mind. Luka found comfort in movies and TV shows, but more specifically, he found comfort in the stars and celebrities he saw on TV. His biggest inspiration and idol being Marilyn Monroe. Luka would later tell a reporter that growing up, he always felt ugly and gross, but whenever he looked at Marilyn, he would imagine himself having a glow up and looking beautiful like her when he got older, and it's this fantasy that helped him get through his childhood. He also became obsessed with getting famous, and in his mind, that was the key to being beautiful and happy. He wanted to be a celebrity by any means necessary. And again, people that come from very abusive backgrounds like that, a lot of times they have these fantasies like that because it's the only thing getting them through the trauma. And a lot of times, people grow up and they follow through with those dreams or, pursue them and stuff like that. And that's what he wanted to do, but he went about it a completely different way. Like Marilyn, Luka felt the key to success was to do things like get a name change, dye your hair, and get plastic surgery, and that's exactly what he did. And this is when Eric Newman will become Luka Magnotta on August 12th, 2006. Now, for the first few years after dropping out of school, Luka made several honest attempts at getting famous. He first tried to make it as an adult film star, and he began to star in several gay adult films around 2003 to 2005. He appeared under the pseudonym Jimmy and would often boast about how he was a quote-unquote, a big name in the porn industry. However, he only ended up actually appearing in about 5 films over 3 years. He appeared in the Canadian gay magazine Fab, and he auditioned for several reality TV shows including Cover Guy and Plastic Makes Perfect, both of which he was rejected from. Now, in order to support himself financially through all this, Luka began working as a male stripper at a club called Remington's and eventually began working as a male escort. He stated he enjoyed the attention he got from the men and again bragged about how, quote-unquote, I usually make about $10,000 a night and sometimes my clients fly me to places like Miami or Italy just to hook up with me. Neither of these things were obviously true, and that is something that will become a running theme throughout this whole episode. You cannot trust a single word that comes out of his mouth. He will publicly say one thing, and the next time he speaks, he'll say something completely different, and then deny what he said previously, despite it being on camera or written in his own handwriting. He eventually got into a relationship with an older woman and convinced her to take out several credit cards in her name in order for him to buy thousands of dollars worth of luxury items and pay for trips out of the country. By the end of the relationship, he had run up over $17,000 worth of credit card debt before ditching the woman altogether. Following this, he was in a relationship with several trans women, 2 of which were later interviewed, and both talked about how narcissistic and deceptive Luka had been in their entire relationship. They also described him as being a pathological liar, whose entire apartment was plastered with photos of himself from top to bottom. And he was constantly wanting them to take more photos of him so he could get them printed out and hung on the wall. So this guy was delusional, to say the least.
And narcissistic,
which lines up because he would later be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder.
That's a shocker right there.
Yeah, that's the biggest plot twist. So by 2007, Luka was still pursuing every avenue he could think of in a desperate attempt to gain fame. He began to create fake profiles of different people all over the internet and Facebook in order to spread rumors about himself in an attempt to get people talking about him. In total, he had upwards of 70 different active profiles that he would interact with and talk back and forth to, all of them dedicated to singing himself praises and discussing the rumors surrounding this Luka Magnotta guy. Now, probably the most popular rumor Luka spread about himself, and one that did actually garner him a little bit of attention both online and in person, was that Luka had begun a relationship with convicted serial killer Karla Homolka. Do you remember who Karla Homolka was?
I do not.
So if you are a huge consumer of true crime, you may have heard of her, or you may know her by her alias. You know, they love to give serial killers aliases. But she was one half of the Ken and Barbie killers, along with her husband, Paul Bernardo. Both of them were convicted of torturing and murdering 3 young girls, including Carla's own young sister, between 1990 and 1992. Now, in September of 2007, Luka actually physically went to the office of the Toronto Sun newspaper in order to officially deny these rumors and gave an in-person interview, which I will actually play a clip of here.
My modeling career is kind of going downhill, basically, these days, to be honest with you. And
it's all because of this whole rumor of you dating Carl Homolka. This is the thing that's...
The rumors destroyed my life, basically, and I've been receiving death threats. My address is posted, that's why I had to move. I want my Pomeranian back. It was taken out of my SUV. I'm about to have a nervous breakdown here. My reputation is completely ruined. I just want everybody to set. I want to set the record straight that me and her have absolutely no connection. I go in to see casting directors. I go in to see agents. You know, they know who I am. You know, it's all over everywhere.
Now, after this, Luka created 20 different blogs and websites dedicated to singing himself praises and even calling himself the next James Dean. He attempted to create his own Wikipedia page, but that was soon taken down because he was considered not noteworthy enough, which of course infuriated him. So that's the thing, like, he kind of made a half-assed attempt at making a name for himself. Anyway, like, that's the thing. He didn't care what it was for. He just wanted to be famous. He wanted people talking about him. He wanted people looking at him. So, you know, he tried it as a male escort, as a gay porn star, and he tried auditioning for reality TV shows, and none of those things seemed to click, or at least click immediately. And that's the thing. I'm like, if you stick with something enough, you're going to make a name for yourself eventually if you are that serious about it.
Yeah, especially if he is this dedicated to it. I mean, just think if he had actually spent this time and resources on something like productive.
And that's the thing, is if he honestly, like, he cared more about just like, he wanted it now, like he wanted people talking about him ASAP. But obviously, I don't think he understands that, you know, that sort of thing usually takes time. Even Marilyn Monroe wasn't an overnight sensation. She kind of worked her way up. But in his fantasy, everyone should know his name. He's the most important person, and they should always be talking about him. So
it's that going viral idea.
Yeah, it's that going viral idea. Before it was even really like a thing. You know, 2012, it was just starting the era of, you know, viral internet celebrities and stuff like that. And so it was that instant gratification. And he was literally just like, I'm just throwing blindly at a dartboard any and everything I can to see what gets me the most attention in the shortest amount of time. But something Luka took from this experience was that the best way to get the attention he was so desperately seeking was from shocking people with disgusting and revolting things, such as dating a serial killer. So that was where he's like, out of everything I've tried so far, the one thing that gets people talking the most is me spreading this rumor that I'm dating a serial killer. And that got him interested in me, like, well, if you look at it, all these serial killers and murderers, like, everyone talks about them. And all they did was kill people. Like, they have their own Wikipedia pages and documentaries and movies. And
most of them are in jail or been electrocuted or put to death.
And that's the thing, is he did not care. He was like, he did not care if he was in jail. He just wanted people talking about him. Now, as the months progressed, he began to use his 70 different fake profiles to spread increasingly disturbing rumors about himself, including that he was in a relationship with his own sister and that the two had a baby together. Luka also began to post disturbing videos to his various Facebook profiles, including one entitled 3 Guys, 1 Hammer. Have you heard of that video before?
I have not, and I think that's probably a good thing.
It's a very good thing. So the video was recorded by 2 Ukrainian serial killers who murdered 21 people over the course of just 2 months. And the 8-minute video shows the killers torturing and murdering a man by stabbing his eyes with screwdrivers and then smashing his head in with a hammer. And this is a legitimate, very, very real video of a murder. The video got the exact response that Luka was wanting, and he started getting all sorts of attention from strangers on the internet. With this, Luka believed he had found the winning formula to get the fame or infamy he always wanted. So Luka would eventually move from Toronto to New York City in an attempt to pursue his dream of getting famous. And it was around his move to New York City in 2010 at the age of 27 that a very disturbing and distressing series of videos began to pop up online.
I think it's weird, too, that he has to move to become an online sensation.
I guess it's that, that belief, like, you either have to move to New York City or LA if you want to be famous, because that's where famous people live.
Even if I'm doing it online.
Even if I'm doing it online. So I think it's just that mentality, like, if I'm in New York City, it'll make me believe I'm a celebrity more. But now, extreme trigger warning for this next part, because it does involve animal abuse and animal deaths. So a video was uploaded to YouTube entitled One Guy, Two Kittens. In the video, it shows Luka playing with two kittens before putting them inside of a plastic bag and then using a vacuum cleaner to suck out the air and suffocating them to death. Just a few days after this video was uploaded, Luka uploaded a second video which showed him, again, I cannot stress the trigger warning here, using the kittens' dead bodies to masturbate himself by rubbing them all over his genitals. Now, although the videos were quickly taken down, it did not take long at all for the backlash to hit, and thousands of people all over the internet began discussing the cat killer, and they started using screenshots from the videos to try and identify him in order to hopefully bring him to justice. And again, if you want an actual in-depth look at the internet sleuths that hunted him during this time, all of it was chronicled in the Netflix series Don't Fuck with Cats. Now, Luka was not shy or even attempted to hide. He joined several of these groups hunting him, and he would taunt them and email various members in the groups and even posted his full name. So he's not trying to get away with it. Like, he wants people talking about him. So he's like, yeah, I did it. It's me. This is my full name. What are you going to do about it? And that, again, that just shows you how just sadistic and delusional he was, honestly.
And also, why wasn't something done about it if they did know his real name?
Well, although Canadian authorities were contacted with this information, nothing ever really came of it because it was animals. So they knew he did it, he admitted to it, and they were working on building a case, but it wasn't something like they were like, ASAP, something needs to be done.
Yeah, I wonder what kind of case you have to work on when you already have the video of the animals being killed.
Exactly. And so that's something that infuriated people even more, was like, they're fully aware. And I mean, yeah, they're building a case, like, this guy's making these videos, but at the same time, they're like, it's just cats, we got more pressing things to worry about before we'll eventually make our way to him.
Yeah, we'll figure this case out. So far, we've got the video of him doing it, and he's given us his full name. We're working on it.
And that's even brought up in the documentary, where several of the people running the cat killer groups, like, looking for him, they were like, we think he needs to be stopped because he is working his way up to killing a human. And wouldn't you know it, he worked his way up to killing a human. So over the course of the next few weeks, Luka posted several more videos showing him murdering kittens. In one video, he drowns a kitten in the bathtub, and in another, he feeds a cat to a python. All the while laughing and bragging online in the groups looking for the cat killer. During all this, Luka eventually moved back to Canada and into an apartment located at Dakari Boulevard in Montreal. And it was here he began to really think of something he could do that would make him just as famous as someone like Karla Homolka. Now, at first, he continued just to try and spread rumors about himself to get people talking about him, this time claiming that he was a necrophiliac, and in one blog post described an incident that happened when he was younger, stating, "When I was a young child, I used to spend so much of my time alone, either in the woods or at the local cemetery. Where there was a grave of a 19-year-old boy that had died last century. I felt close to that boy. I would pick flowers and take them to his grave. In 2003, I discovered a mummified corpse of a young man in a vault in a church I was renovating with a friend. It broke my heart to lock him in there. I wanted to take him home and look at it, watch TV with him. I daydream of having him here with me." So again, as shocking as revolting he can get, he's like, what gets people shocked? Having sex with dead bodies, having incest with my sister, killing cats wasn't enough. By 2012, Luka was ready to take the next step. He saw the reaction he got from people whenever he posted videos of himself murdering kittens, so he couldn't even imagine the reaction he would get if he took it to the next step. It was here that he began to lay the groundwork to plan his biggest act yet, murdering another human being. On May 8th, 2012, Luka uploaded a video to his YouTube which had a simple white screen with "Coming Soon" in bold red letters across it. The following day, on May 9th, Luka uploaded a video which was a simple still image showing the side profile of a man in a hoodie and his face obscured. He was wielding what looked to be an ice pick in front of a poster for the film Casablanca, and the film was simply entitled "One Lunatic, One Ice Pick." Just a few weeks later, Luka would put his plan into motion and commit one of the most horrific murders you will ever hear about, and all these videos were promotion of him promoting this upcoming project of his.
This story just really pisses me off.
Oh, it's going to get worse. Over the following weeks, Luka began to search online for sedatives and the proper dosage to give someone in order to render them unconscious but not killing them. He began to post ads on Craigslist looking for men to hook up with, and other ads asking for men for an acting gig in which they would not be paid but would gain acting experience for a project he was working on. One still unidentified man answered one of Luka's ads and actually traveled to his apartment on May 18th, 2012, 6 days before the murder. Although not everything is known about what happened, photos would soon surface of the unidentified man seemingly passed out on Luka's bed and Luka cuddled up next to him. And it's haunting. I mean, the photos are out there. There's nothing graphic, but you just see this man, it looks like he's asleep, and then you just see Luka, like, resting his head on his chest, and with what we know now, it's terrifying. A video also surfaced of the man having been stripped nude and tied to Luka's bed. Luka was straddling the man and asking him if he was okay, but the man didn't respond. The next day, CCTV footage of the apartment complex where Luka lived showed Luka helping the man downstairs and out of the apartment complex. The man was having trouble walking or staying upright, but otherwise seemed to be unharmed. Now, authorities would later state that they believe this was the final trial run for Luka before he set his true plan into motion and actually went through with murdering someone. And again, just to think that man, later on finding out about this, like, how close to death you were. Like, what if you weren't his test victim? What if you were his victim? So, such a terrifying thought to think about.
I'm shocked he wasn't his victim. He literally had a victim already tied up.
He did, but as we'll see here soon, he had other things he had planned for his victim that he wanted to make sure that he got right, because he didn't want to mess it up, because he had all this planned out. So, again, they think it was him to use it to make sure the dosage was okay and that the sedatives were the right amount. Now, after this incredibly creepy encounter, Luka was now confident and ready to set his real plan into motion, and he once again put out ads on Craigslist asking for men to take part in a movie or to have sex, and through one of these ads, although we are still not sure which, Luka would end up meeting and eventually murdering 34-year-old June Lin. Now, June Lin was born on December 30th, 1978, in the city of Wuhan, located in the People's Republic of China. Although sadly not much is known about his early life, we do know he had a good and close relationship with his family, which included his parents and a younger sister. His parents often doted on their son and would tell him how proud they were of him, as June was described as being a very polite, smart, and friendly boy all throughout his younger years and into adulthood. And again, that's another thing that sucks too with these kind of cases. Like, we do, of course, have all this information on the killer and the perpetrator, and a lot of the times you don't have as much information about the victims. Again, it's the whole sensationalist thing. People are more curious about what drove this perpetrator to do these depraved things. And so it is important to remember the victims, though, and what little information we do have about them. So June Lin would eventually meet and marry a woman. However, the two quickly divorced, and following this in 2010, June June moved from China to Montreal in order to study chemical engineering at Concordia University. June saw Canada as a fresh start from his family, as although he loved them, he knew he could not live his true, authentic self in China. June was gay, and it was something he struggled with for most of his life, as he didn't want to disappoint his parents by not marrying a woman and starting a family. However, in Canada, June was able to live happily as an openly gay man as he attended school and worked part-time at a grocery store nearby. He eventually began a relationship with another man, and the two were together for close to 2 years before breaking up in early 2012 due to June Lin feeling pressure from his parents to marry a woman. Now, following this breakup, the two stayed in touch and remained close friends. Later at the trial, June's ex stated that the two still talked through text every day following the breakup, and June still confided in him about everything. Although he felt he couldn't be in a relationship with the man, June Lin still had sexual needs, and he began using apps like Grindr in order to meet and hook up with guys. Luka would later state that June had responded to a Craigslist ad asking for someone to come over to have sex and practice bondage with. However, June's ex stated that June was never into bondage, so whether that is true or not, again, we will never know because, remember, Luka is a first-class bullshitter, and you can't trust anything he says. But with that, sadly, that leads us to Thursday, May 24th, 2012. Now that day, June's ex stated that he and June texted back and forth throughout most of the day, and that nothing seemed out of the ordinary, it was just a normal day. But sometime that evening, Luka and June would meet up before Luka took June back to his apartment. The two were seen on the apartment building's CCTV entering at 10:16 p.m. and making their way up to Luka's place. This would be the last time June would ever be seen alive again. Luka would not be seen on the CCTV again until 2:06 a.m., at which point he is seen making several trips from his apartment to the building's trash bins, carrying multiple bags of unidentified items and throwing them away over the next hour or so. It would later be revealed that these bags contained evidence of Luka's brutal crime, including bloody clothes, a laptop, a camera, a memory card, bloody gloves, bloody knives, and most disturbing of all, a bloody screwdriver that had been spray-painted silver. Now, Luka is seen wearing June's clothes during his disposal of evidence, but no sign of June would be found. After Luka finished, he calmly returned to his apartment, and that's where he began working on the next part of his sadistic plan. So on May 25th, the day after June was last seen, a video appeared on the website bestscore.com. Now, for those of you who've been on the internet for a while, you probably remember this website. Again, do you know what bestscore.com is?
I have heard of bestscore.com, but it's nothing I've ever been to.
Yeah, it is one of those websites that has a lot of infamy behind it. I'm honestly not sure if it's still around. I'm going to check real quick. But it was and continues to be pretty infamous. It was a website that essentially hosted the worst of the worst. It had videos of real-life murders, execution, terrorist videos, grisly aftermaths of suicides, natural disasters, and like its name, it had any and everything related to real-life gore.
That sounds awful. That's why I never went to it.
It's horrible, and this is not like something that's like on the dark web. You could literally just Google it, and it's right there on the front page.
So this episode was literally interrupted right here by a lady coming to the back door, and there's a missing dog, and we actually, as a neighborhood, went out and looked for this missing dog, and we found it, thankfully. But this is just going back to this episode. Listening to this about these cats being hurt has got me thoroughly pissed off. So I just actually wanted to tell that in the story because that's what you should do for animals. You should treat them, you go out, the neighborhood comes together, we go find them. These people online, if they didn't think hurting animals and everything was a big deal, just look what it could lead to.
Yeah, literally right in the middle of recording, we heard someone coming up the driveway, and we're like, someone is here. And yeah, it was the neighbors, the new neighbors, their dog got out, was missing. And so all the surrounding neighbors went out, and we trudged through the bushes and into the woods looking for this dog, and we found it. But like you said, that's a great show of coming together to help, rescue this poor innocent dog, and that's how you should treat animals, as love on them. And that just shows you, honestly, for me and for him, it highlights just how careless and heartless Luka Magnotta was, and how he was able to just do all these horrific things to these cats. And not only that, but record it and then post it and then boast about it online and taunt people to find him and stuff like that. It just shows you what little regard he has for life in general. And like the people in the cat killing groups were saying, if he cares this little about cats, what do you think he'll do if he feels emboldened enough to go after a human? And that's exactly what he did.
Okay, back to the episode. Sorry about that.
So like I was saying, bestscore.com was a host for the worst of the worst. I remember hearing about it all the time when I was in middle school, because that was around the time I was in middle school. And it had such notoriety. So a video was uploaded to bestscore.com on May 25th, the day after June Lynn was last seen alive. The 11-minute long video was entitled One Lunatic, One Ice Pick, and quickly made its way around the internet as people began to share it to everyone they knew, completely in shock at what they were seeing. And in one sad incident, the video was actually seen by June's ex-boyfriend. That day, after not hearing from June all day, he started to get worried because, like I said earlier, the two were still very good friends after they broke up. And they always talked to each other throughout the day. They were each other's closest friends. And so it was very out of character for June not to say anything or respond to texts. But just as he was getting worried, that's when several people sent him links to the video, asking him if it was real. Curious, he clicked on the video and watched, and what he saw was something beyond horrific. So now, this is an extreme trigger warning, because this is extreme trigger warning, because this is probably one of the most graphic incidents, videos, descriptions I'm going to read to you. The description is graphic, so now just imagine that this is a video that is out there. So after Luka and June are seen on CCTV going up to Luka's apartment on May 24th, it's believed that Luka offered June a drink laced with sedatives, which were later found in his system. After June was unconscious, Luka proceeded to strip him naked and then tie him to a bed before setting up a video camera to record it all. And this is where the video starts. June is tied to the bed with a cloth covering his face. He attempts to move his arms and legs around slightly, but it's clear he's heavily drugged and can't really move. Luka, dressed all in black, is standing next to the bed looking down at June as the song True Faith by New Order plays in the background. This song was chosen because Luka was a big fan of the movie American Psycho. Luka then proceeds to stab June repeatedly in the abdomen with a screwdriver before the camera cuts to show a close-up of the bloody wounds. Luka stabs June several more times before retrieving a large knife from the kitchen. The video jumps to show June, now dead, with a large knife wound to his neck, which would later be determined to be the likely cause of his death. From there, the video gets even worse. The video then jumps to showing June's body decapitated and shows a close-up view as Luka begins to saw off both of June's arms. Luka then uses one of June's severed arms to masturbate himself and rub his own crotch. Luka proceeds to cut off June's legs before allowing his dog into the room to chew on one of the bloody leg stumps. Afterwards, he turns June's body over on its stomach and proceeds to take a soda bottle and shove it into his anus. After this, he removes his own pants and proceeds to have sex with the corpse. Following this, he is seen using a knife and a fork to cut away chunks of flesh from June's buttocks and attempting to get his dog to eat them. Now, although it is not seen in the video, police revealed that they saw an extended version of the video, and in it, there is clear evidence of cannibalism on Luka's part. And that is where the video ends. 11 minutes of a murder and mutilation, necrophilia, and cannibalism. So when Luka was making this video, he was like, I'm going to hit all the main points that I think will shock and disgust people more than anything. And sadly, it worked.
Honestly, just hearing you say it was too much for me. That was awful. That's too much.
I'll bring it up a little later. This video is still out there, and from time to time it does make its rounds on websites like Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it. I have seen part of the video that when it was on X, or Twitter, back in like 2015, and that was only a small snippet. I would never recommend anyone searching it or watching it. It is beyond horrific. So
plus you're giving power to that asshole that done this.
And you're giving power to him. This is what he wants. He wants people to watch it. He wants people to be shocked about it, to be disgusted by it. So don't watch it. If you watch it, it's like kind of giving power to him because that's exactly what he wants. So best thing to do is just forget about the video entirely and, make him realize that he didn't succeed in whatever twisted game he was playing here. So after uploading the video, Luka booked a round-trip flight to Paris and was now officially on the run, excited to see the reaction to his horrific acts. Over the next few days, the video spread like wildfire across the internet as thousands argued whether the video was real or not, with many reporting the video to police. On May 26, an attorney attempted to report the video to the Toronto PD, but stated that nothing seemed to be done about it. That is until May 29th, when mysterious packages began showing up all over the place containing severed body parts. The day the body parts were found, June's severed head was found in a nearby park, and his mutilated torso was found stuffed inside of a suitcase sitting out behind the dumpster of Luka Magnotta's apartment building. Now, police acted quickly and got a warrant to search Luka's apartment after his driver's license was found inside of the suitcase with the severed torso. Inside of the apartment, police found the mattress soaked with blood splattered in the fridge and in the bathtub, and it was quickly discovered that the body parts did belong to June Lin, who by this point had been reported missing by his ex-boyfriend. And police had the grim news to share that the video going around online was indeed very real, and it depicted the murder and mutilation of June Lin. On May 30th, Luka Magnotta was officially charged with murder, and police began a worldwide manhunt looking for him. Luka was on the run from police for about a week. A red notice had been issued for him, which meant that police in any country were to arrest him if they found him. He stayed in Paris with a guy he had been talking to online. From there, he taunted police online and boasted about his crimes to people online, including sending his sister a text that read, "How does it feel to be the sister of a murderer?" Luka would flee Paris and catch a flight to Berlin, Germany, just as police were closing in on him. However, his luck would finally run out on June 4th, 2012, after he stopped by an internet cafe in Berlin and a worker there recognized his photo. Police were called and quickly arrived at the scene to discover Luka Googling articles about himself and reading his horrific crimes. Again, just shows you what a narcissist he is. Although he attempted to give police a fake name, he eventually admitted to who he was, and he went quietly with police without much of a struggle. Luka was flown back to Canada and on June 18th appeared in court for his charges, to which he pleaded not guilty. Now, his trial began on September 29th, 2014, and his defense tactic was to openly admit to the murder and everything that followed, including uploading the video to the internet. However, the defense team argued that he was not guilty due to diminished responsibility at the time of the murder. Luka would state before the trial, when talking with an investigator, that he had actually committed the murder on the orders of a man named Manny. He explained that Manny was a very wealthy client of his from his days as a male escort, and that he had a violent temper. Luka claims that Manny was just off camera during the video, and he was the one ordering Luka to murder June and dismember his body. Of course, investigators were able to easily prove that no such man existed, and eventually Luka admitted that he took it and part of his inspiration for the murder from his favorite movie, Basic Instinct. Now, in the film's opening scene, Sharon Stone's character, Catherine Chamal, is shown having sex with her boyfriend, Manny Vasquez, and during the sex scene, she pulls out an ice pick and brutally stabs him to death with it. This would explain why the screwdriver had been painted silver, as Luka wanted to disguise it and make it look like an ice pick that was used in the movie. His defense also argued that Luka was a clinically diagnosed schizophrenic and that voices had told him to kill. However, prosecutors argued that Luka took the time to not only quote-unquote promote his murder online at least 10 days before the murder, but he also had the mental stability to clean up after the crime scene and edit the murder video and upload it online, and then plan his escape from the country. All of which shows that he was very much in a clear state of mind. So after 12 weeks, on December 15th, 2014, the jury returned with a verdict, and they found Luka guilty on all charges, including first-degree murder, committing an indignity with a dead body, publishing obscene material, and mailing obscene material. For this, he would be sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Now, June Lin was cremated on July 11th and buried in Montreal during a ceremony attended by his friends and family, including his parents who flew from China to Canada. His parents were present every day for Luka's trial, and at one point June's father Darren actually collapsed upon hearing the horrific details of what happened to his son. At his funeral, June's father can be seen tightly hugging the box containing his son's ashes and sobbing, showing you just how devastating this was for so many people. And also adding, just like, these are real people, and it's especially like with videos out there, that's even more horrific, knowing that your child's death, horrific murder, and mutilation is just out there on the internet. I think seeing the photo, which I will post on our socials, of his dad literally clutching his son's ashes to his chest and sobbing really drives home the fact that it's not a movie. It's not fake. This was a real person, real family, friends that loved them, was a great person by everyone who described him. He was a beautiful human being, and he was taken in such a horrific way by someone who did it in their warped mind to be famous. So this is also also in a very surprising move, police actually brought charges against the owner of bestscore.com, Mark Merrick, for quote-unquote corrupting public morals for allowing his site to host the video of June's murder. And that's something that's kind of set a precedent because it hadn't been done before. Because bestscore.com is a website where you can just, users just upload what they want. So it's not really screened or anything like that because the whole point of it is graphic and disgusting material. And so Luka created a profile and uploaded it. And so Mark got charged for the fact that he had a platform to upload something like this and it not be immediately taken down is grounds for you, the host of the website, corrupting public morals. And a judge agreed because Mark pled guilty and was sentenced to 6 months on house arrest. Luka Magnotta has never expressed any remorse for his crimes and remains in prison. The last update regarding his status was from earlier this year, actually in March, when it was revealed he had recently been transferred to a medium security prison to serve out the rest of his sentence. Whether that is 25 years or for life remains to be determined, but hopefully it is for life. And that is the absolutely horrific case of Luka Magnotta and the tragic, brutal, senseless murder of June Lin.
Well, it was very well researched and everything, but I absolutely hated listening to this episode. It made me very, very, very angry. So
it does. It makes you infuriate. It's infuriating. It's angry and stuff like that. It was hard to research, actually, because of course, I knew about the case and the infamy behind it, because of course it's always mentioned on websites and stuff. Like it's the guy that did the one lunatic, one I speak video, all this stuff, but I never actually took the time to sit down and read all the details of it. And I knew he was infamous for animal abuse in the past, but what he actually did, reading everything in detail was chilling and horrific. And just the fact that someone out there like that, I can't even describe it. He's a killer, but he did all this in a weird take to get fame. And at the end of the day, that's all he wanted was to be famous. He was like, I don't care if I get it from doing something actually productive, but the easier way is just to be as big of a shit and monstrous human being as I possibly can. And so that's what I'm going to do to be quote unquote famous. It's just a disgusting human being. And it's sad someone had to lose their life. And it's also infuriating that police did not take people's concerns seriously. Usually one of the earliest signs of a serial killer is animal abuse, and they just work their way up to humans. And people tried to tell, investigators and stuff that, hey, we have serious concerns that he may progress very soon. And it's kind of just like, we hear you, we'll get to it eventually. And sadly, it was too late. And with that, thank you guys so much for tuning in for another episode. I know this was a really rough one, really tragic, really sad case, but it is important to remember the story so it doesn't happen again. If you enjoyed this episode and the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review or rating on iTunes or Spotify. Helps us out a lot, helps other people discover the podcast, and of course, we just love hearing from you guys. If you want to see photos from this case, you can follow us on Instagram at beerswithqueerspod, that's P-O-D, or on Facebook at Beers with Queers, a true crime podcast. And until Monday, stay dangerous out there, my friend.
See you soon.
Bye.